Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all doing well today. In this episode, I wanted to discuss a very well-known conspiracy theory that revolved around one of Harley Davidson's most popular models, if not the most popular model. So if you've ever watched the 1991 film The Terminator Judgment Day, I'm sure you're familiar with the iconic scene where Arnold Schwarzenegger jumps a big twin Harley off of an overpass in a heroic attempt to save John Connor's life. Aside from the special effects and just plain badassery of that scene, if you ask me, that was a great marketing scheme by Harley Davidson for one of their newer models that had just been released a year before, the Harley Fat Boy. On the other hand though, you might not be able to say the same for some of the rumors surrounding this particular model of Harley Davidson. That is unless you subscribe to the idea that all publicity is good publicity. And considering the fact that this is one of Harley Davidson's most iconic models, I would almost have to say that that phrase commonly used in marketing almost seems to ring true, at least in this case. Okay, so some of you watching might already know where I'm about to go with this, but others might be a little bit surprised with what I'm going to say. But it's not actually me who's saying it, because these rumors actually surfaced almost immediately after this ever so popular softail model was released. That rumor being that the name and design of the Harley Davidson Fat Boy was an underhanded jab that Harley was taking at their Japanese competitors at the time. Is this all just like myth and conspiracy made up by the public, or is there something more to it than that? Because to me, it is a little sus. So let's take a look at some of the details that, if you ask me, are just a little bit too coincidental. So let's go back in time a little bit to the early 80s when Japanese motorcycles were becoming increasingly more popular in the United States and were actually in direct competition with Harley Davidson. So much so that Harley Davidson actually requested for tariffs to be issued on the importing of all large displacement motorcycles coming into the United States from Japan, which in 1983 President Ronald Reagan actually gave in to Harley Davidson's requests and imposed tariffs on all motorcycles coming in from Japan that were 650cc and larger. Those tariffs were initially imposed at a 45% and then were meant to decrease over the course of about 4 or 5 years until October 1987, when, to everybody's surprise, I'm sure, Harley Davidson themselves actually requested for those tariffs to be lifted. And it was not but a short time later that the creative juices began to flow in the minds of Willie G Davidson and his counterpart Louis Netz, who, by the spring of 1988, were ready to show off their Fat Boy prototype at Daytona Bike Week. And in 1990, the Fat Boy made its official debut on showroom floors across America with its striking design that featured a silver gray paint on the frame and bodywork, mustard yellow highlights on the engine rocker boxes and ignition cover, along with its winged tank decal, solid cast aluminum front and rear wheels, and let's not forget that fat back tire, because everybody loves a fatty. Right, Tiny? Okay, now I want to actually look a little closer at some of these seemingly harmless design details. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about Fat Man and Little Boy. Fat Man and Little Boy, as I'm sure most of you already know, were the names that were given to the 2 atomic bombs which were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, consequently ending the Second World War. Now, you can probably already see where I'm about to go with this, and to me, it's no real surprise why people might have thought that the name given to the Harley Fat Boy might have been a little bit of a jab towards Japan. But besides the name, I think there are some design features that hold a pretty strong resemblance to the forces used on that fateful day in August 1945. So let's get into those a little bit, guys, and as we move through this, you guys can decide for yourselves whether or not you think that this is all just coincidence or whatever you think it is. So let's take the color scheme that was chosen by Willie G into account. In 1990, when the Fat Boy was released, the only paint scheme that was available on that model was the silver metallic with the yellow highlights. All of the bodywork as well as the frame were done in this silver color, and then it had almost a mustard looking yellow on the engine rocker boxes, the points cover, the primary cover as highlights. Now, oddly enough, guys, both bombs that were dropped in Japan were either painted yellow or had yellow highlights, and they were both carried by silver B-29 bombers. The Fat Man bomb was painted a mustard yellow, while the Little Boy bomb had yellow markings on its side. There's also conflicting information out there about whether or not the Little Boy bomb was actually painted or if it was just left its natural color, which would have been like a gunmetal kind of silvery gray. So I could not actually find any colored photos of the Little Boy bomb, though. There's only colored photos of the Fat Man bomb, so there's no way to really confirm the color of the Little Boy bomb. I know that they continued to make the Little Boy bomb even after the Second World War, and the Little Boy bombs that were built post-war, they were painted like an olive green. But because there's no actual colored photos of the Little Boy bomb available, there's no way to confirm whether or not it was painted or if it was in fact left its metallic color. And unless you speak to an eyewitness, I don't think there's any way to really actually know that. Either way, I would still say that the paint chosen for the original Fat Boy was kind of a suspicious color scheme. Okay, so the name is kind of suspicious. The paint, well, maybe if it was the paint without the name, maybe it wouldn't really be suspicious. But if those two things were not sus enough for you, then how about we take a look at another small but not insignificant detail of the Fat Boy design, the tank emblem. And before I continue, I'm going to point out that the early Fat Boy was the only Harley model to ever have this emblem put on the tank. I did my research, guys, so I know. But honestly, if you guys know otherwise, if you guys have any other like information or research or anything like that, post some links or whatever down in the comments section, because I would like to know the truth. And according to all my research, which has been pretty extensive, I think that kind of onto something here. But anyway, guys, the tank emblem is definitely super sus if you ask me, and it probably wouldn't be sus at all if it wasn't combined with the name and the paint scheme already. So let's take a closer look at this tank emblem and why, to me, it's a little bit, I don't know, too coincidental, as I've already said. So the design that I'm referring to is the winged badge proudly and patriotically displayed on the side of the Harley Fat Boy's hefty 5-gallon tanks. Now, some of you looking at it might just think, oh, it's nothing but a Harley Davidson's new design. After all, they've changed their tank emblems so many times over the years. And yeah, maybe it could just be considered nothing but a harmless design, but considering the name and paint scheme of the bike that this emblem was chosen for, I would almost say that it is not as innocent as it appears. And I don't know about you guys, but my first impression when looking at this emblem isn't something that reminds me right away of Harley Davidson. After all, it was only ever used on that one model. And the very first thing that came to mind for me when I saw this emblem was that it has like a very strong military resemblance. And I couldn't quite pinpoint it, but to me, it did give off some kind of military vibes. So I did some digging, guys, and I didn't have to dig very far to figure out what it was that it reminded me of. And what I found that tank decal really actually reminds me of was the Bombardier badge, which was issued to the United States Air Force from 1918 to 1945. And believe it or not, it was actually members of the US Air Force, because who else would it be, who carried and dropped the bombs on Japan. Okay, so now we've talked about the name, the paint scheme, that tank decal. So let's just look at one last, maybe less significant detail of the Fat Boy design, but not so insignificant that people haven't noticed, because it's definitely been something that people have pointed out and kind of used as leverage for this whole Fat Boy conspiracy theory, if you can call it that. And that would be the cast aluminum wheels that they put on the Fat Boy. These wheels, if you look at them, and if you look at the photo that I'm gonna have the screen of the B29 wheels, they do take a little bit of a similar appearance to the B29 wheels. And people have said that those wheels on the Fat Boy were designed intentionally to resemble those B29 bomber wheels. And, you know, there's no real way to really disprove that, because the only thing that you're going off of at this point are the words of the people who designed those motorcycles. But you cannot deny that the resemblance is definitely there. At least it is, in my opinion. So this rumor has been ongoing since basically the release of the Harley Fat Boy. However, in recent years, there have been claims made by the current vice president of styling and development at Harley Davidson, Scott Miller, saying that the name was meant to be nothing more than descriptive of the bike's fat look and had nothing to do with Harley's Japanese competitors. On the other hand, though, I've also seen claims being made stating that in early magazine interviews, Willie G Davidson is quoted as saying that the Fat Boy will be the third bomb dropped on Japan. Obviously, like, you would need to have those magazine articles to really prove that, but those are quotes and comments that I've seen like older men make who, I mean, would have no real reason to lie about that, I don't think. But guys, if you've read an article in a magazine like that, like back at the time when the bike was released, then definitely, guys, let me know. If you guys have a magazine with an article like that, guys, I will pay you money for it. And also, let me know, like, in the comments, like, comment, tell me what you guys think about this, tell me how things were. Like, I wasn't around when the Fat Boy was released, so I wouldn't know, I wouldn't be able to know what it was actually going on back then, but you guys tell me what you think. Obviously, guys, that is a claim that is going to be strongly denied by anybody at Harley Davidson, as well as Willie G, because the world is a very different place now than it was in the late 80s and early 90s, and if they did anything but deny those claims, they would quickly find an angry, cell phone wielding mob at their doorstep, ready to put Harley Davidson's head on a stake for the entire world to see. And I'm pretty sure that that's like the last thing that Harley Davidson needs at this point, considering all of the other things that have happened with them in recent history, very recent history. So guys, this is something I suppose you could all say is definitely open for interpretation, so make of it what you will. But I'd say that when you combine all these details about the Fat Boy, the name, the decal, the paint scheme, the wheels, the year that it was released, immediately after the tariffs were lifted off of Japan, I think it all adds up to a very suspicious conclusion. So guys, is this just a crazy conspiracy, or is it far too coincidental to be chalked up to nothing but a myth? Let me know what you guys all think, and in the words of Willie G Davidson himself, the Fat Boy was designed to be a symbol of patriotism and nostalgia. And with all of that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you guys want to see more episodes like this, or if you like what you see, or if you just like me, or even if you don't like me but you like my bikes, then like, comment, subscribe, do all those things you guys do, and like always, I'll catch you all on the flip side. Peace.